Some people don't slowly become different. They change so fast that even they don't recognize who they've become. We like to believe personality is stable, that who someone is today will still be there tomorrow. But psychology tells a quieter, more unsettling story. Because sudden personality changes don't just reshape one person, they alter relationships, rewrite trust, and leave others searching for explanations that never fully arrive. And often the most disturbing part is this: no one can point to the exact moment it began. At first, the change is barely noticeable: a shorter temper, less patience, more distance. Friends excuse it: stress, work, a rough patch. But this is where things start to change. The shift doesn't fade, it sharpens. Conversations feel different, decisions feel colder, values that once mattered quietly disappear. The person still sounds the same, still looks the same, but something essential feels missing. What happened next raised more questions than answers. One of the most misunderstood truths in psychology is that personality isn't fixed, it's regulated. Under normal conditions, the brain maintains balance, emotional control, empathy, restraint. But when that system is pushed beyond capacity, regulation begins to fail. And the trigger is rarely dramatic. More often, it's invisible. For many people, sudden personality changes are the result of prolonged psychological overload. Not one crisis, but many small pressures stacking quietly over time. Unexpressed stress, chronic responsibility, emotional suppression. Eventually, the mind adapts, not gently, efficiently. Empathy narrows, patience thins, emotions flatten. And strangely, this doesn't feel like loss, it feels like relief. Here's the unsettling part. The person changing may feel better, calmer, more controlled, while everyone around them feels they're disappearing. That's because emotional numbing can feel like strength. When anxiety, guilt, or emotional burden becomes constant, the brain reduces access to feeling, not to harm, but to survive. But this adaptation doesn't come without consequences. But this is where things start to fracture. Another powerful driver of sudden personality change is identity collapse. Most people don't realize how much of their personality depends on roles: who they are at work, who they are in relationships, who they believe they're supposed to be. When a role disappears suddenly, without preparation, the mind destabilizes. A career ends, a relationship breaks, a belief system fails, and the structure holding the personality together collapses with it. The brain doesn't tolerate emptiness, so it replaces the old identity with something new, sometimes something unrecognizable. This is why personality shifts often follow major life events, not because the event changed the person, but because it removed the framework that kept them coherent. And what fills that gap isn't always healthy. What happened next raised more questions than answers. There's another reason these changes feel so disturbing to others. The experience is uneven. From the inside, the change feels justified, even necessary. From the outside, it feels sudden and unexplained. To the person changing, it feels overdue. To everyone else, it feels like abandonment. That disconnect creates silence, and silence accelerates transformation. In some cases, the shift isn't about becoming someone new, but about revealing something old. Traits that were suppressed for years begin to surface: assertiveness, detachment, risk-taking. To others, it feels like a personality replacement. To the person, it feels like honesty. But honesty without reflection often turns extreme. Confidence becomes dominance. Independence becomes isolation. Boundaries harden into walls. And because the change feels empowering, it goes unchallenged, at least internally. This is usually when relationships begin to break. Not suddenly, but quietly. The emotional rules change. What once mattered no longer does. What once hurt feels irrelevant. And the people who notice first are the ones closest. What happened next raised more questions than answers. Another overlooked cause of sudden personality change is unresolved emotional trauma. Not traumatic trauma, but quiet, repetitive erosion. Being dismissed, being undervalued, being consistently misunderstood. Over time, the mind adapts again. Trust decreases. Emotional openness feels dangerous. Self-protection takes priority. The result isn't sadness, it's distance. Emotional coldness is often misunderstood. It isn't the absence of feeling, it's containment. The brain learns that caring costs too much, so it limits access. From the outside, the person seems hardened. From the inside, they feel controlled. But control isolates, and isolation reinforces the change. But this is where things start to change again. Some personality shifts are temporary, others become permanent. The difference is awareness. If the person reflects, questions what's happening, the personality can rebalance. If they don't, the new traits solidify. The brain reinforces what it repeats. Detachment becomes habit, reactivity becomes identity, distance becomes normal. This is why people say they're not the same anymore. And often they're right. Not because the person is broken, but because adaptation replaced authenticity. One of the hardest truths in psychology is this: growth and damage can look identical. Both involve change, both involve loss, both require leaving parts of the old self behind. The difference lies in intention and self-awareness, and that difference is rarely visible. What happened next raised more questions than answers. Eventually, people stop asking why the change happened. They start deciding what it means. Labels replace understanding, judgment replaces curiosity. But the real explanation usually remains internal. Most sudden personality changes aren't rebellion, they're compensation. The mind correcting for something it endured, lacked, or carried for too long. The tragedy is that compensation without understanding becomes disconnection. The person adapts, but adapts alone, and isolation makes the change permanent. Psychology doesn't judge personality change as good or bad. It sees it as a signal that something exceeded capacity, that something became unsustainable. Ignoring the signal doesn't restore the old self, it just hardens the new one. In the end, sudden personality changes are rarely sudden. They're the visible end of a process that began quietly, months or even years earlier, unnoticed, unaddressed, unspoken. So the next time someone in your life feels unfamiliar, ask a harder question than, "What's wrong with them?" Ask instead, "What did their mind need to become this way?" And one final question: if you changed this much, would you even recognize it in yourself?